Okay, hi everyone. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to show you, we're looking at prototyping. So I'm just going to show you a really quick way to go from this little animation we've made in Blender out to a laser cutter. So we're going to end up with a vector file like this in Inkscape. So I didn't mean to zoom in that much. So these are now vector, this is like a vector drawing, so this can be cut by a laser cutter now. I'll show you a couple of ways to do this and yeah, make it pretty quick. Okay, so let's just hop back to Blender. The first most conventional way to get vectors out of Blender, I've made a video in doing this in the past, is using the Freestyle renderer. I'm actually not going to recommend that for this one, but I'll just show you really quickly. If I go into my add-ons, I want to show you that again, edit, didn't mean to do that. Edit, preferences, free. Just make sure that Freestyle SVG Exporter is ticked here, and then it will be available to you in your interface. Okay, so the reason that Freestyle can be really useful is, say for example, I wanted to export a vector image with all of these edges. That could be really useful. Say we wanted to etch the pattern in a laser cut, or you wanted to use it in another design application. If we wanted to do the Freestyle method, we go into the render tab here, tick Freestyle Export, and then we've got a number of settings. My favorite one is actually the edge mark. So just tick Freestyle here, and then I think you need to go into your view layer. Freestyle is now available here because we've ticked it, and it'll just ask us what type of vectors we want to export. If I just render this frame with the default settings, it'll render our image, and then we'll see these heavy black lines as a vector image. But if we save this image, we're not going to get the vectors, we're still going to get a bitmap image. So this has actually gone to wherever like Blender's render direction is pointing. So what we do here, I just change this to, let's go into my teaching folder, and I'll put it like in my SVG folder. I'll accept that. Now if I render this frame, render image, it'll render the image, render the frame, and then if I pop on over to, let me just grab that folder. If I pop on over to my Finder here, you'll see that that frame number 78 has rendered as an SVG. Okay, so that's cool. And where that's really useful, I'll show you just on one object. Let me just go down to these settings. I'm going to untick all of these, which at the moment would mean it would render no vectors. But on this torus, I'm going to go into edit mode, right click, and mark Freestyle Edge. And they'll go this kind of yellowy green color. Now if I'll go to another frame, just so we won't overwrite the previous image, render image, and okay, it's still picked up some other ones. That's what's going on. It should have only gotten those edge types. Let me just check why. Okay, I think it might need to be exclusive, and edge mark should be ticked. Let's try that again. Render image. Nope. What am I doing wrong here? Inclusive. Yeah, that seems right. Render image. Okay, that's what I need. Okay, so yeah, I needed to have that ticked and have these set correctly. But now you can see that I've got all of the contour lines of this torus, which might be useful for something you want to do. And if I go into my folder, I've now got frame 79 with that torus. The other thing you can see is that my other shapes are masking the torus, which for what we're going to do today would be a problem. So I'm going to show you another way to do it. Here, you know, if you didn't want that, you just hide, you know, the icospheres from your render and, you know, render it out again, and you wouldn't have that culling and hide the head. Okay, but we're going to do it another way. So I'm actually going to turn off the Freestyle settings here. And what I actually want to do is we are going to render. If I go to my sorry, no. Oh, okay, I forgot to label the file. We're just going to render frames with flat colors, and that will be enough for us to get a nice clean vector image from Inkscape. So what we're going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to rename really quickly some of these. I'll call this one head. I'll call this one torso. I'll call this one background. And boom, boom, boom. Why do we call this hips 1, hips 2, hips 3, and call that box. What's this? Okay, leg 1 and leg 2. Just a bit easier to know what we're doing. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to hide my background, hide the box, and hide everything that's not the head, and we're just going to render the head because I want to make sure there's nothing else in the way. You'll notice here I'm turning off the viewport view mode and also the render, so that we're not we're hiding them from our viewport, but we also don't want them to appear in the render. The other thing I want to do is in my render tab, I'm going to go down to film and just tick transparent, and that's going to make sure that we don't render a background. This will just be an alpha transparency. I'm going to go back to frame 78, and the last thing I'm going to do, just to get it even cleaner, I'm going to go into my shader for this head, click on the head, and I'm just going to copy and paste the hex code there and pop it into the emission. I'll show you what I mean. If I go into my rendered setting there, in the hex code I'll paste that, and I'm just going to turn the emission to 1, and we get a pretty flat shape, which will give us a cleaner read for what we're going to do in the next step. So now I'm just going to render this image, and then I'm going to save this image as in my, this is supposed to be called renders folder, and you can see I've already done this, but I'll just save a couple to show you. Call it head_2, and I'm going to save a PNG file and make sure it's on RGB with A for alpha, so we've got that transparency. So now we should have that head 2 I just saved here, and we've got just the head and the transparent background. I'll do one more just so you're really clear on what I'm doing. So I'll just make some space on my outliner. This time I'll hide the head, and maybe I'll do all of the hips. Oop, that's the head. Hips 1, 2, 3. Reveal them in the render, and I'll just quickly do that same thing to the shader. Copy the hex code so we've got the same color in the emission, and just turn the emission to 1. Gives us a pretty flat shape. Still got some lighting, but it's fine. And now I'm just going to render that image. There we go. I'll save that, save as, and that will be saved as like hips 2, only because I've done it before. You don't need to put in the 2. Save as image. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of the parts of my dancer, and then you're going to download the software called Inkscape. I'll put the link in the description. Alternatively, if you have Adobe Illustrator, it'll do the same job. Inkscape is just an open source version. Okay, so I'll delete what I've done before. Oh, okay. We're going to get to here basically. We're going to have all of these parts ready to be laser cut. And the cool thing is then we can kind of put once it's all laser cut, we can have these as actual objects and put them back together and make like a little sculpture of our dancer. Now, of course, it's not the most interesting project, but what I want you to see is like the potential of moving between sort of animation and fabrication. And in other projects, you can do projection mapping onto these shapes where you might bring the two ideas back together again. So let's just delete that, and I'll show you the process. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll just delete these extra ones I made so I don't get confused. Right click. Okay. So first of all, let's just grab the head. Going to drag that in. You might get a pop-up asking you for like some import settings. Just click OK. The default settings are fine. So here's my image. At the moment, this is not a vector. It's just a bitmap image, so we can't laser cut it. But all we need to do is go Path, Trace Bitmap, and we'll get some trace settings here. And we're just going to adjust the threshold till we get, because this image is so clean, it's just a transparent background. It's really easy to just basically get, a clean read on our shape. going to hit apply. It's going to be all black. I can drag that off, click on the image and delete it. The vector is what we want. And then I'm just going to change some settings. So I'm going to click on the stroke down here. It looks like it pops up here. And I'm just going to set the stroke to black. And then I'm going to go to the fill and just click the little cross, just so we can see the vector outlines. And if I zoom in and I just left click on that a few times, maybe I have to double click, there we go. We'll see we've got a really clean vector trace. The only issue with the Freestyle renderer from Blender is we'd have like hundreds and hundreds of little vector points here, whereas this trace bitmap in this context works really well because it's a very simple shape. So all you need to do is complete that process for all of the other bits that you want to laser cut. So I've here are my hips, path, trace bitmap, play around with the threshold till it's just a clean black silhouette. Apply, drag it over here, delete the original, and then go to the stroke. Just click that there and it seems to pop up here. And I'm just clicking on the flat color here, choosing a color, and then going back to the fill tab and just clicking the cross. So we just have a vector like this. Once you've got all of your shapes together, the last thing you need to do for the laser cutter, it uses a kind of slightly older piece of like vector software, and it needs a DXF file. So all you need to do is save as, and you need to just go down and go desktop cutting plotter AutoCAD DXF R14. And then I suggest making a folder for your DXF files. I've already made one, which you saw at the beginning of the tutorial. This one I'll call Dancer2. Save it, and then that's ready to go to our laser cutter. Okay, so hopefully that gives you all the steps you need, and then we can cut some stuff during class. Oh, I've got a little pop-up here that happened when I was exporting. I'll just click OK. I get that little error, but in my experience, the error doesn't actually make a problem when we laser cut. Okay, so hopefully that will get you over the line with the laser cutting, and we will take our project one step further. Okay, see you all in class. Bye-bye.